partnering this evening with the Barrington Cultural Commission, and this is our first time that we have had a panel of artists on the subject of creativity, and that's such a fascinating topic. So we'll spend about the first 50 minutes on questions, and then there will be time for a little break, and then we will move on to the second part of the evening. So let me get started now. Let's get started with our questions. And the first set of questions, we are beginning with this evening, are on inspiration. And we'll just begin with asking our panel, why do we as humans feel the need to create? How does the need to create feel to you? Is it a little voice in your head with a song, a character speaking to you, or an idea that won't go away? Is there anyone who would like to start out this evening with that question on why do we humans feel the need to create?
When I first started, when I came here, I was trying to think of one of the first questions was asked about what forms inspiration. I myself work on an unusual level of ideas, and there is no equation to how I work. I work by a field of the surroundings that I live under. And if I was to be talking with someone who was a beginner at in the field of cartooning, it was very hard for me to try to find the right words to get them to be comfortable with what I do. But let me try it and do it anyway. My concept of ideas comes from actually my style of my upbringing, how I see life and how I see people. And people as individuals grow through that stem of ideas and how you relate to your families, how you relate to your friends, your workforce, and you drum up your own personality. And personality is a root of humor for me, because life is nothing more than an active comic scene. We all live through comic situations every day. And my thoughts and my ideas about my comic strip stems from living life every day. And I don't force my ideas on myself. I used to. But I found out that it's sort of like shortchanges in my scope of what I find funny and what I find that's just passable. And working with editors today, they're very precise about certain situations, so you've got to be very particular about how you come out with certain subject matters. And the style of work that I do, I have to be very particular about technology and what it's all about. And since I don't even own a cell phone, but I am aware of what's going on out there. And it has to do with working with the field that you live with. So, I mean, to answer that question directly, it's just the idea of just coming from within yourself to figure out where you're at from your lifestyle and how you were raised. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, we can always come back to a question, and the next one is, where do your ideas come from? What inspires you? Okay.
I think an artist's work is kind of or should be a reflection of their life, and their life should be a reflection of their work. And it's kind of parallel with what Charlotte just said. But I think if you are grounded, and if you take the time to know who you are as an individual in life, and if you set some standards and some, you know how you feel about what's good about life, or what's good and what's bad, and what's right and what's wrong, then I think a pool of ideas flow, and I think it's all about just being inspired from within, instead of trying to force it, because you can't force any creativity in any way to come out of you. I think it just flows. I think you need to kind of go inside of yourself first, and then it kind of comes out. And it's a process to learn how to do that. But everybody can do that. Am I babbling on too long? my whole thing is, I hated my work in the beginning for many years, but I believed I could create work that was valuable, and as far as inspiration and what inspires me, I would expose myself to a lot of work from other artists, and I would find something in their work that inspired me, and then I would just get passionate about it, and I would just keep on going. But for many, many years, I wasn't happy with my work, and I pretty much learned the hard way by teaching myself what moved me, and when I found the things that moved me from down within, and then I started focusing my energies on those things, then all of a sudden my work changed, and one day I started loving my work. I can remember it was like a switch flip, where all of a sudden I started creating work, and it was consistent, and I was excited about it every single time. I mean, I can usually hit the mark. It's because I know what I'm doing.
Well, talking about where ideas come from, I think for a writer, I would describe myself as kind of a collector, and I'm always listening to little snippets of conversation, and if something's really good, I'll write it down. And I remember seeing an interview once with Anne Lamont, who's a very good author, and she used to do work on a column, which she had once a month, and then she would work in a restaurant at the front desk, and someone came in once and said something, and she thought it was so great that she pulled up her sleeve and wrote it down, because she said she wanted to capture exactly the words that they said, because if she tried to remember it later, it wouldn't be the same. And somehow she would have missed what they said. So for me, I think I look at different mediums, like what Bill does, what Kathy does, or what Thomas does, and those all sift around in my head, and ideas sift around in my head, and then somehow a connection is made. And I think that's the mysterious part of creativity is, how does that connection get made in your head? And as Charles and Thomas both said, it's very personal. I'm going to connect disparate things in a way that someone else wouldn't, because I have my own background and my own skill set and my own experiences, but it comes out in the form of writing for me. And I try artistry and we'll leave that to the artists.
I like the learning curve. That is really what is inspiring me. I love to experiment. I like to take a subject that I don't know anything about and learn as much as I can. And hopefully do it by myself through a lot of trial and error. And I think that's where my creativity comes, is the joy of figuring something out and letting something evolve as I'm learning it. And there's always another medium, there's always another venue to try. And when you're not able to spend that much time, that can be making gingerbread houses, or it can be making gardening, or doing gardening. There's always something to learn. And I definitely think that's where I get I'm very big on process. I love that. And I feel often when I start a piece, I really don't know where it's going. And I like the fact that as it's growing, it is creating itself. And my hands are just kind of facilitating it.
I get my inspiration pretty much almost all from nature. I just think anything that's, everything, it couldn't be more perfect. If you look at most stuff in nature, movement, color, and just, it's exciting. It reminded me when I was a little kid, I had a very small kid, I lived in a big house, and outside my window was a giant maple tree, and it turned just incredible colors in the fall. And it was like watching a movie, but it was it wasn't a movie. I always wanted to put a picture frame around the window. I get to sit there all year long in the different seasons to sit and look at it. And there's, I think when you're young, and the first time you see it, crystal snowflakes, or weird rain, or just how a plant is, or just a color. Sometimes when you're a little kid, your vision is still so sharp, and you can see really well, and your mind clicks on that. And I never got past that point. I still look for, so every time I see, you gotta look outside, and look for inspiration. I can tell everyone to go outside and turn around and just look at it. It's pretty phenomenal, And whether no matter what you're writing or painting or anything that you're doing, there's all the inspiration you need stacked up outside right now.
And I would say for me, I get the benefit as a dancer to use all of these things to make it come to life. So for me, we got to work, for example, this year I worked with the Barrington United Way, and we commissioned a piece of art. And when we did that, then we took it a step further and thought, wouldn't it be great to create a piece or a dance that represents how that choreographer sees that piece. So for me, when I'm sitting here and I look at that art, all I can see is a dance that would represent that. So my creativity comes from, you know, pictures or writing or even a pottery or a shape. So I feel like mine is really the easiest form of creativity, and I think naturally we all dance. You know, I get people all the time who say, I don't dance. Well, you do, you're just either embarrassed about how it looks, or it's not comfortable for you in your culture. But if you watch babies, itty bitty babies to music, they all move. They all have this need to move, and for me, it's, if you don't want to get up and move, then maybe watching others move fills that for you, because that's how I feel. And certainly my work, much like Tom's, has evolved throughout my life. You know, what I was doing when I was 22 is certainly not what I was doing when I was 32 or 42. You know, and things that come into your life, people and children and experiences absolutely play into. But I think the common ground here is all of us, the ideas come from our life, from the everyday people we interact with, what they say, what they do, what we see, and that's absolutely true for me. You know, completely have made dances that are somewhat comedic in nature about people. Their shapes, their way they walk, the way they move, is, you know, so easy and so fun. So for me, it's also about that joy that brings not only to me, but I'm hoping to others. Like there should be a purpose in it.
Do you get inspiration from other mediums? For example, do you play music when you're painting?
Oh, definitely. Play music anyway, but when I started painting, it's always that the best part is the blank canvas is the idea portion of it. So I call it, it's like cooking stew for me. You'll see something and just kind of let it all sit in your head, and then I kind of find an appropriate piece of music to, you know, put my headphones on and have the canvas get all the paint ready, and then then you attack it. And I like music that's appropriate for the attack.
And my angle on comic strip was that actually I started out in theater. Believe it or not, I tried to become an actor. But I'm out of Memphis, and I used to work in a place called Pink Panther, which is an outfit, an organization that governed the theater community in Memphis. And I used to work behind stage. And when I came here, I worked in the theater part-time. And it wasn't great, but they're closed down. They closed it down. But what I'm trying to get at is, the comic strips that I do is really actually nothing more than a one-dimensional stage set. And all cartoonists look at their work like this. They think of writing a play for that particular day. And my comic's about one panel thing, so I do a lot of things pertaining to how to capture everything into one panel. Where some comic strips, well, a lot of comic strips, most of them are multi-panels. Mine is a single panel. And single panels are a little bit more hard, not knocking the multi-panel. The single panel is very hard to produce each day, because what you do, you only have one panel and one time to come up to bat and hit. You got to hit that little run. And recently, I've been not doing too good, according to the editors and stuff. But you live with that, and you go on with the next. But that's the theater is what influences the
I can tell you that I'm rarely looking at my own medium, partly because I'm so afraid that it's going to influence me, and I don't want any potters I don't want my pieces to look like anyone else. Plus, most potters use a wheel, and I don't want to. I mean, wheels give you very